Doctors are trying to prevent children from dying appalling deaths. Thousands of children are born each year with devastating genetic diseases that will eventually kill them. Megan Abshire was one such child. When she was just a few months old, a doctor told her parents that she had a genetic disease called Tay-Sachs.
And I just kind of looked at him, and that absolutely meant nothing to me. And he said that, you know, that she looked like that she was in the end stages. And I said to him, I said, well, what kind of medicine will you give her and she's going to get better, right? And he said, oh, no, I think you've misunderstood. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, this is a fatal genetic disease.
It's hard to accept, you know, someone telling you that your beautiful child that you held in the hospital and you gave her first bottle and changed her first diaper, that now that beautiful gift that you had is now going to die, you know, because at that point all we knew from what they had told us, she didn't have very long to live, because the first physician who gave her the diagnosis said something like 6 months. Of course, she lived to be 3.5.
It's a central nervous system disease, which means that all of the effects will begin from the central nervous system. And she completely lost all motor skills. She could not even, you know, move an arm. She barely could move her little head. And she could not speak. You don't think when you have a child that your dream is going to be, God, just let her breathe one more breath, you know. It became our desire just to see her, just to be able to open her eyes and look at us at that day, you know.
After our daughter had died, we had made a decision that because we couldn't have any more children without the chance of having another child affected by Tay-Sachs, that we wouldn't have any more children. That we would just go on with our life, but children wouldn't be a part of our life because we just couldn't take the chance. It's too great.
About a year after Megan died, the Abshires received a phone call from a clinic in Virginia. Doctors there wanted to try out a brand new technique to give them a child free of Tay-Sachs.
In the mid-1980s, there were more and more medical illnesses, serious deadly illnesses, that were being recognized as genetic. And more importantly, the precise genetic abnormality was being recognized so that we could ask specific questions to diagnose it. Also, in vitro fertilization techniques were evolving to the point that we're more comfortable with our abilities to handle early embryos. So I began talking to my genetic colleagues about the possibility that we could put these two techniques together.
The technique that was developed in both Britain and America is called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, or PGD. Some of Renee Abshire's eggs were fertilized with her husband's sperm in the lab. They were allowed to divide until each embryo was just a small cluster of cells. Then acid was used to etch a hole through the membrane. And one cell sucked out. Even with a cell removed, this embryo could go on to develop into a normal baby. But before it was allowed to do so, the DNA of the cell removed from each embryo was tested for the Tay-Sachs gene. The first 3 embryos tested were healthy, so they were implanted into Renee. But the 4th embryo had the disease, and it was discarded. In the end, just one of the 3 healthy embryos developed into a baby. Brittany Abshire was the first child in the United States to be born through PGD.
She was beautiful. I mean, the moment was beautiful.
The birth of Brittany Abshire was the culmination of the dreams of nearly a decade of work. To hold Brittany in my arms was a lifelong dream.
Since Brittany was born 5 years ago, hundreds of babies around the world have been conceived through PGD, free from a variety of terrible genetic diseases. Most scientists agree that medicine is the only legitimate use of this technique. But as we learn more about our genes, there's a chance that some parents will go beyond choosing embryos for health and select them for more trivial reasons.
I have no doubt that in the future, people are going to want to use this technology for uses that go beyond medicine, for uses that are cosmetic, for things like eye color and height, and other things that are on the border of medicine like longevity. I have no question in my mind this technology is going to be used to provide people with these kinds of genetic choices in their children.
I'm not sure exactly where the line is drawn, but clearly on one side are terrible diseases like Tay-Sachs, which are lethal soon. On the other side would be hair color, eye color. Does it really matter whether your child will have curly red hair versus straight black or blonde hair?
PGD is energy intensive, it's work intensive, it's emotionally intensive process. We use this technique to try to help parents have healthy children. It's not about designer babies, it's not science fiction. It should not be used to prevent conditions that are not considered illnesses.